The worst leader you've ever worked for probably had a leadership book on their shelf. So did the best one. The room goes quiet the second she walks in, not because she's the loudest person in it, she's usually the last one to speak. The captain who kept 28 men alive on pack ice for 2 years, with no rescue, no radio, and no plan that survived contact with the ice. The general who inherited a war that couldn't be won the old way, and had to burn down his own chain of command just to have a shot at winning it. The consultant who sat in enough boardrooms to notice that talented teams fail for the same 5 reasons, over and over, in companies that have never spoken to each other. The researcher who discovered that the smartest person in the room is often the one quietly draining everyone else's intelligence out of it. None of them found a formula that guarantees people will follow you. They found something more useful than that. These 10 books are what they found. And the number 1 pick isn't a leadership book at all. I ranked these by how much they actually change the way you lead the moment people are depending on you, not by how many copies they sold. And for each one, I'm going to break down the actual ideas inside. Not just the title and a one-line summary. Number 10. The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team by Patrick Lencioni. Lencioni's core argument, told through a fictional CEO trying to save a dying Silicon Valley company, is that teams don't fail because of strategy, market conditions, or intelligence. They fail because of predictable, interpersonal breakdowns that stack on top of each other like a pyramid. His key concept is the 5 dysfunctions themselves. Absence of trust, where people won't admit weakness in front of each other. Fear of conflict, where disagreement gets smoothed over instead of worked through. Lack of commitment, where decisions never get real buy-in because nobody argued for or against them honestly. Avoidance of accountability, where teammates won't call each other out on missed standards. And inattention to results, where individual ego quietly outranks the team's actual goal. And Lencioni argues each dysfunction only exists because the one beneath it was never solved. A concrete example he gives. An executive team sits through a calm, polite meeting where every decision gets a nod, and then the real disagreement happens afterward, in the hallway, inside conversations that never reach the room, what Lencioni calls the meeting after the meeting. And he uses it to show that a team that looks harmonious on the surface is often the least trusting, least honest team in the building. Link to grab this one is in the description, timestamped below. Number 9. Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willink and Leif Babin. Willink and Babin's core argument, built from leading SEAL units in the Battle of Ramadi and later teaching the same principles to corporate teams, is that there are no bad teams, only bad leaders. And that a leader who blames subordinates, bad luck, or unclear instructions for a failure has already lost the ability to fix it. Their key concept is extreme ownership. The discipline of the leader owning everything in their world, every mistake, every miscommunication, every missed deadline, with 0 exceptions. Because the moment a leader accepts blame instead of assigning it, the entire team stops being afraid of failure and starts actually solving problems. A concrete example they give. After a chaotic firefight in Ramadi results in a friendly fire incident, Willink stands in front of his commanding officers and takes full personal responsibility for the failure, even though several individual mistakes by different people contributed to it. And he shows that this single act of ownership, rather than triggering punishment, earned him more authority and trust from his men than any tactical victory could have. What makes this book different from the 5 dysfunctions of a team is that Lencioni is diagnosing what breaks down between teammates, while Willink and Babin are arguing that almost all of it traces back to one person at the top refusing to own the outcome. Link is in the description. Number 8. Team of Teams by General Stanley McChrystal. McChrystal's core argument, drawn from commanding the Joint Special Operations Task Force against Al-Qaeda in Iraq, is that a traditional, top-down military hierarchy, no matter how well trained, is simply too slow to beat a decentralized, adaptive enemy network. So the organization itself had to be redesigned to think and move like the thing it was fighting. His key concept is shared consciousness paired with empowered execution. The idea that instead of information flowing slowly up a chain of command for a decision to flow back down, everyone across the entire organization needs to see the same picture in real time. so that the person closest to the problem can act on it immediately, without waiting for permission from someone many ranks above them. A concrete example he gives. McChrystal installs a daily operations briefing that eventually includes thousands of people across ranks, agencies, and even allied nations watching the same live intelligence simultaneously. And he shows that once a junior officer had the same situational awareness as a general, decisions that used to take days started happening in minutes, because trust had replaced the chain of command as the actual mechanism of speed. What makes this book different from extreme ownership is that Willink and Babin are focused on the leader's personal accountability inside an existing hierarchy, while McChrystal is arguing the hierarchy itself is often the problem, and has to be torn apart and rebuilt as a network before ownership at the top can even matter. Grab it using the link below. Number 7. Multipliers by Liz Wiseman. Wiseman's core argument, built from research into why some leaders' teams operate at a fraction of their real capability, is that certain leaders unintentionally act as diminishers, draining the intelligence out of a room just by being the smartest, loudest voice in it. While other leaders act as multipliers, who make the people around them measurably smarter and more capable simply by how they lead. Her key concept is the contrasting set of disciplines that separate the two. The diminisher hoards talent as an empire builder, while the multiplier is a talent magnet who attracts and grows it. The diminisher creates tension as a tyrant, while the multiplier creates safety as a liberator. The diminisher has all the answers as a know-it-all, while the multiplier asks the hard question as a challenger. And Wiseman argues most diminishers have no idea they're doing it, because in the moment it feels like leadership. A concrete example she gives. A brilliant executive walks into every meeting and speaks first, and without realizing it, his team's actual output quietly drops by half, because once he's given his opinion, nobody else feels the need, or the safety, to offer a competing one. And Wiseman contrasts him with a multiplier who asks a difficult question, then deliberately stays silent, and watches the room's collective thinking double in the space that silence creates. What makes this book different from Team of Teams is that McChrystal is redesigning the structure that information moves through, while Wiseman is showing that even inside a perfectly designed structure, one person's personality can quietly cut everyone else's intelligence in half. Links in the description. Number 6. Dare to Lead by Brené Brown. Brown's core argument, built from years of researching shame, vulnerability, and courage and then applying that research inside organizations, is that vulnerability isn't weakness in a leader, it's the single most accurate predictor of whether a team will actually tell that leader the truth. Her key concept is the 4 skill sets that make up daring leadership. Rumbling with vulnerability, staying in a hard conversation instead of retreating into certainty or silence. Living into our values, actually practicing the values a leader claims to hold, not just stating them. Braving trust, building trust deliberately through small, specific, repeated behaviors rather than hoping it appears on its own. And learning to rise, getting back up from setbacks in a way that turns the failure into real data instead of just pain. And Brown argues a leader who skips straight to results without doing this internal work usually gets compliance, not commitment. A concrete example she gives. A leader, mid-crisis, stands in front of her team and says I don't know instead of performing false confidence, naming exactly what she doesn't yet have an answer for. And Brown shows that trust in the room goes up, not down, because the team can finally stop guessing what the leader isn't saying. What makes this book different from Multipliers is that Wiseman is focused on how a leader draws out other people's intelligence, while Brown is focused on the leader's own emotional armor, and what has to come off before that intelligence-drawing behavior is even possible. Link is in the description. Number 5. Radical Candor by Kim Scott. Scott's core argument, built from her time managing teams at Google and coaching executives at Apple, is that most managers fail their people not through cruelty, but through a misguided kindness that withholds the feedback someone actually needs to grow. Her key concept is a simple 2-part framework. Care personally on one axis and challenge directly on the other. And the 4 combinations that result from them. Radical candor, where you care and challenge at once. Ruinous empathy, where you care but stay silent to spare feelings. which Scott argues is the most common and most damaging failure mode. Obnoxious aggression, where you challenge without caring, which just humiliates people. And manipulative insincerity, where you do neither, which is simple dishonesty dressed up as diplomacy. A concrete example she gives. After Scott delivers a presentation she's proud of, Sheryl Sandberg pulls her aside and tells her directly that she says so often it's undermining how smart she sounds, feedback so blunt it stings in the moment. And Scott shows that this one piece of direct, clearly caring feedback did more for her career than months of vague, polite praise from other bosses ever had. What makes this book different from Dare to Lead is that Brown is focused on the internal courage a leader needs before a hard conversation. While Scott is handing you the actual mechanics of that conversation, the specific language that separates honesty that helps from honesty that just hurts. Links in the description. Number 4. Good to Great by Jim Collins. Collins's core argument, built from a research team that spent 5 years studying companies that jumped from average performance to sustained greatness, is that the single variable separating those companies from their nearly identical competitors was almost always the person at the very top. His key concept is Level 5 leadership, a paradoxical blend of extreme personal humility and fierce professional will. A leader who deflects credit for success onto the team or plain luck, but takes personal responsibility the moment something goes wrong. And Collins argues this combination is so counterintuitive that most boards actively select against it, preferring charismatic, self-promoting leaders instead. A concrete example he gives. Darwin Smith, the little-known CEO of Kimberly-Clark, sells off the company's traditional paper mills, the business it had been built on for 100 years, to bet everything on consumer products instead, a decision Wall Street mocked at the time. And Collins shows that Smith never once took credit for the transformation in interviews, insisting he'd simply been trying not to be the one who ran the company into the ground. What makes this book different from Radical Candor is that Scott is teaching a specific conversational skill any manager can use tomorrow, while Collins is describing a rarer, deeper trait of character that determines whether a leader even wants to hear hard truths in the first place. Link is in the description. Number 3. Start with Why by Simon Sinek. Sinek's core argument, drawn from studying why some leaders and organizations inspire loyalty while equally capable competitors don't, is that most leaders communicate from the outside in, starting with what they do, when the most inspiring ones do the exact opposite. His key concept is the golden circle. 3 concentric layers: what, the products or services an organization offers; how, the process or approach that makes them different; and why, the underlying purpose or belief that got the organization started in the first place. And Sinek argues most organizations can easily explain the outer 2 layers, but only the ones that lead with why manage to inspire real loyalty instead of just making a sale. A concrete example he gives. A typical computer company markets by listing specs: we make great computers, they're beautifully designed, want to buy one. While Apple instead starts by stating a belief: everything we do challenges the status quo, and only afterward mentions that this belief happens to produce great computers. And Sinek shows customers weren't buying what Apple made, they were buying why Apple made it. What makes this book different from Good to Great is that Collins is describing the internal character of the person leading, while Sinek is describing the external message that person uses to get anyone to want to follow them at all. Links in the description. Number 2. The Servant as Leader by Robert K. Greenleaf. Greenleaf's core argument, published as an essay after decades inside AT&T's management structure, is that the traditional idea of a leader, someone who is served first and leads second, has it exactly backward, and that the most durable form of leadership begins with a genuine desire to serve, with the authority to lead arriving only afterward, as a consequence of that service. His key concept is the best test of servant leadership. Do the people being served grow as individuals, becoming healthier, wiser, freer, and more capable? And, critically, are they more likely to themselves become servants to others as a result? Meaning Greenleaf measures leadership not by what the leader accomplishes, but by what the people around the leader become. A concrete image he returns to. A minor character named Leo in Hermann Hesse's novel Journey to the East, who travels with a group as their servant, doing the menial chores no one else wants. And when Leo disappears partway through the journey, the group falls apart entirely, only for it to be revealed later that Leo had actually been the true guide and spiritual leader of the group the whole time. The servant role was never separate from the leadership, it was the leadership. What makes this book different from Start With Why is that Sinek is teaching a leader how to communicate purpose outward, so people choose to follow, while Greenleaf is arguing that the purpose itself has to be service to those people, or the followership it produces was never real leadership to begin with. Link is in the description. And number 1. Endurance by Alfred Lansing. Unlike every other book on this list, this one isn't a leadership book at all. It's the true account of Ernest Shackletow's 1914 attempt to cross Antarctica, and of what happened after his ship, the Endurance, got crushed and swallowed by pack ice 1,000 miles from the nearest human being. Lansing's central claim, though he never states it as a thesis, since he's simply narrating what happened, is that leadership isn't tested by whether the plan works, it's tested by what a person does in the months after the plan has completely and irreversibly failed. His key concept, drawn straight from Shackletow's decisions rather than any framework, is managing morale as the actual survival strategy. Shackletow reorganizes the sleeping tents so that the two most negative, complaining men on the crew bunk with him personally, not to punish them, but to keep their doubt from spreading unsupervised through the rest of the camp. He insists on maintaining routines, tea at the same hour, jokes at dinner, small rituals of normal life, even while stranded on drifting ice with no rescue coming. Because he understood that hope wasn't a feeling he could order his men to have, it was a condition he had to engineer for them, day by day, for nearly 2 years. A concrete image the book returns to. 28 men, out of food, out of ship, out of any plan that still made sense, watch their captain calmly redistribute the last of the sled dog's rations and crack a joke about the weather. And Lansing shows that not one of those 28 men died, not one, and every survivor later credited that outcome not to luck, but to the specific, deliberate way Shackletow managed their minds when he had lost control of everything else. What makes this book the definitive number 1 on this list is that every other title here is teaching you a framework, a model, or a skill to practice before the crisis arrives. Shackletow had none of that available to him, no book, no framework, nothing but the ice and 27 other men looking at him to decide whether hope was still a reasonable thing to have. Proving that leadership was never really about the plan surviving contact with reality, it was about whether the people following you do. Link is in the description. The number 1 pick proves something simple. A framework can tell you how to run a meeting. Only the person you become under pressure tells you whether anyone will still follow you once the plan is gone. Which of these have you read, and which one changed how you think about leadership? Drop it in the comments.